Hello everyone. We are going to learn about research book. Okay, let's start from first chapter. Okay, gonna board. Okay, now introduction. But start गरौँ है त. In this chapter, we will explain what research is and try to understand the purpose and type of research, the nature of research investigations, their characteristics, and the process involved in scientific research will also be explained. This chapter will also briefly explain the different approaches to research and paradigm shift taking place in research methodology. मलाई कस्तो रिस उठ्यो भन्दाखेरि नि के भन्छ कि लाइभमा के छोडिदिनु म पढ्छु यार छोडिदिनु है जे खै मेरो घरिघरि नेट नचलेर के गाइज कुरा नगर्नु न यहाँ नेट चल्दैन कि फेरि एन्ड देन अब हेर है मिनिङ अफ रिसर्च भनेको के हो त द ओल्ड रिसर्च क्यान बी लिजिटमेटली legitimately applied to a very many contexts. It can be used to refer to both a specialized pursuit of knowledge creation and to a much more general everyday problem solving situation is a starting point. Therefore, it is useful to examine some definitions that explain the meaning and a broad range of purpose and activities engaged in research. We will consider three definitions here. Fred Karlinger and S.B. Lee 2000 research is a systematic, controlled, empirical, and critical investigation of hypothetical propositions about the presumed relations among natural phenomena. John W. Best and J.B. Khan, K-A-H-N, Khan, 2006 research is a systematic and objective analysis and recording of observation that may lead to the development of a theory. Uma Sekaran and Roger Bugi, research 2013 research is an organized, systematic, data based, critical, scientific inquiry or investigation into a specific problem undertaken with the objectives of finding answers or solutions to it. What common things? कति सानो अक्षरमा लेखेको हो नि गाइज यो बुक त औडा रहेछ नि त केही भन त्यही नि पढ्नै त नि होइन वाट कमन थिङ्स टु डु यु फाइन्ड इन दिस डेफिनेसन्स वाट आर द डिफरेन्सेस इफ एनिथिङ दिस डेफिनेसन्स रिभिल डिफरेन्ट views is to the nature of research, how it should be conducted, and what it aims to achieve. In looking for commonalities in this definition, we find that they basically talked about the nature and inquiry and basic characteristics of research. These definitions of research highlight two important aspects. First, research investigations are sufficiently broad to include all types of investigations requiring solution to a problem or creation of new knowledge. Second, they explicitly cut the gram, please. Explicitly recognize the systematic nature of the research process in which data are gathered, recorded, analyzed, and interpreted in an organized and systematic manner. The research activities thus are or aim to be planned, cautions systematic and reliable ways of finding out or deepening understanding. The research process involve a series of well thought out activities of gathering, recording, analyzing, and interpreting the data with the purpose of finding answers to the problems at hand. The entire process based on the philosophies principles and mechanisms of research by which we attempt to solve problems or search the answers to questions are collectively known as the research methodology. The method are the techniques or process we use conduct our research. The methodology is methodology is the discipline, philosophy, or body of knowledge that utilizes these methods. Let us take a true to life situation to explain the meaning of disease. When the disease called bird flu first appeared in Hong Kong, China, doctors had no clue at all what disease it was, what caused it, or how to cure it. They were certain of only two things. It seems to originated from birds and it attacked the immune system of the victim. Give that situation, medical researchers set out to investigate the nature and cause of the disease. To date a lot is known about this disease because researchers have spent considerable time and resources in resources in gathering information through observing patients and conducting experiments. Using this example, we can take the word research to mean to investigate repeatedly. Research or quite is an endeavor to discover answers to problems based on empirical evidence. We study the social problem again and again to find out something more about the phenomenon. The first look may not always be adequate. It may be prone to error. Therefore, we look into the phenomenon again and again, study the problem differently and truly each time this process of search again to come closer and closer to the truth is known as research. Research thus allows us to move from ignorance to acknowledge. Scientific research. Concept of scientific research. Science is defined as the specific method or logic of inquiry. This definition suggests that the method of science is somehow unique and different than other methods of inquiry. It has specific rules or characteristics that have to be followed. Science has two purposes. The first purpose of science is to improve the quality of life. Its second purpose is to develop explanatory relationships which are generally called theories. Hence, any systematic and organized pursuit of investigation is known as scientific research. Systematic and organized pursuit of investigation is known as scientific research. Science can be grouped into two broad categories: natural science and social science. Natural science is the science of naturally occurring objects or phenomena such as lights, objects, matter, earth, celestial bodies, or human bodies. Natural science can be further classified into physical science, earth science, life science, and others. In contrast, social science is the science of depend of the person making the scientific observation. However, the same cannot be said for the social science, which tend to have higher level of ambiguity, uncertainty, and error. Scientific science has to focus the goal of problem solving. It pursues a step by step logical, organized, and rigorous methods to identify problems, gather data, analyze the data, and draw the valid conclusion therefrom. Thus, scientific research is not based on hunches, experience, and intuitions alone, but is purposive and rigorous. Sikaran and Vyugi 2013. It is a procedure, a general strategy that indicates an ordered sequence of moves or steps which is researcher has to make or go through in order to reach the goal of his or research. Scientific research is often associated predominantly with the natural science such as biology, chemistry, or physics, and seen as the enterprise that generates objective knowledge about the world. However, this terminology is not only used for research in natural sciences. All scientists, whether in natural or social science, use the scientific method of investigation. The subject matter being studied, therefore, does not determine whether or not the process is called scientific. It makes no difference whether the investigation is in the fields traditionally held to be science, such as chemistry and physics, or as in the various areas of human relations, including business and other social sciences. The activity of an investigator is scientific if he or she correctly uses scientific method, and the investigator is a scientific if he or she uses the scientific method in his or her thinking and researching for information. Okay. Scientific method involves determining facts through observation of events or things and verifying the accuracy of these facts through continued observation. After classifying and analyzing the facts, scientists look for and find some causal relationship which they believe to be true. Such generalizations, called hypotheses, are then tested for their accuracy. The scientific research is a procedure, a general strategy that indicates an ordered sequence of moves or steps which the researcher has to make or go through in order to reach the goal of his research. Newman 2011. These explanations of scientific method thus indicate research as being essentially factual and systematic, with no doubt about its range of application. Feature of scientific research: a research study has to meet certain conditions in order to be called a scientific research. In other words, scientific research has some features which is must satisfy in evaluating the quality of scientific research. There are some key characteristics to consider: purposiveness, testability, replicability, objectivity, rigor, and generalizability. सी कारण एंड बग्यू 2013बाट लिएको a brief description of these features of science research is as follows. Investigation must have focus on specific purpose. Research without purpose leads the die nowhere. The purpose of science research directly influence all your activities as a researcher. It forms the basis for your procedures, influence your methods or methods of executing it, and affects the under interpretation of your findings. By carefully following the major purpose of the study, you can reduce the possibility of making major errors and increase the possibility that meaningful research results will be obtained. Thus, purposiveness is the important characteristics of scientific research. Testability. The purpose of scientific research is to develop and test the hypothesis. Test of hypothesis is therefore an important feature of scientific research. Research studies which and test the hypothesis do not meet the criteria of scientific research. There are several statistical techniques and tools available to you, which help you to test the hypothesis. The ultimate outcome of the scientific investigation is therefore to see that the hypotheses are tested. Replicability. Scientific research must be replicable. The research results which are replicable have more acceptability and confidence as being scientific. In other words, by using similar method and procedures of data collection and analysis is followed by the previous study, the other research studies must also come out with similar results. Replicability thus indicates the hypotheses which were substantiated by previous study had not been supported merely by chance. Replicability is thus an important characteristic of the scientific research. Objectivity. The more objective the analysis and interpretation of data, the more scientific the research investigation becomes. Through you might start with some initial subjective values and brief beliefs. Your interpretation of data should be stripped of personal values and biases. You should strive to attain objectivity in your research method and interpretation. In other words, fact should determine your conclusion. Sometimes measurement errors and other problems are also bound to introduce biases and subjectivity in your finding. You should thus take extra caution caution to keep the research process bias free. Therefore, objectivity is the required condition for scientific research. Objectivity is essential because it is necessary that others be able to understand and replicate a finding before it is considered dependable. Rigor connotes carefulness, scrupulousness, and the degree of exactitude in research investigation. Scientific research is definitely a rigorous process. It involves a good theory base and carefully throughout methodology. These factors enable you to collect the right kind of information from an appropriate sample with minimum amount of bias, and they facilitate approach data analysis. Once the data have been gathered, lack of rigor in research may lead to selection or faulty research design, inappropriate or biased collection and interpretation of data, and wrong conclusion. Generalizability. Scientific research aims to making generalization. By generalization we mean the wider applicability of the research finding. Of course, not many research findings can be generalized to all other settings, situations, or organizations. For wider generalizability, the research sampling design has to be logical, developed, and number of other meticulous details in the data collection methods needs to be followed. A more elaborate sampling design would increase the generalizing of the results. Obviously, the wider the range of applicability of the solutions generated by the research, the more useful to research is to the users of such research knowledge. The more generalizable the research, the greater it is useful and value. Above the above six features of research investigations together form a base and criteria of scientific research. Thank you. This is all for the today. Hi. Bye. Bye.